and the mockery of anyone passing by. Add in the whipping post, a sturdy wooden beam where criminals were lashed until their backs split open, and you had a recipe for public theater. Whipping wasn't a few lashes, it could be dozens, even hundreds. The whip often had knots or bits of metal woven into it, designed to tear flesh. Survivors carried scars like maps of their punishment, visible reminders of their shame. The ducking stool took humiliation into watery territory. Accused scolds, cheats, or suspected witches were strapped into a wooden chair attached to a long beam. Then, like a grotesque seesaw, they were dunked repeatedly into a river or pond. Imagine gasping for breath, choking on muddy water, freezing cold, while crowds laughed and jeered. Sometimes the goal was testing. If you drowned, you were innocent. If you floated, you were guilty and dragged back up for more. It wasn't just a punishment, it was a public game of life and death, with rules that guaranteed you'd lose. And if you thought rats were just pests, the 16th century had other ideas. Rat torture was a particularly sadistic method documented across Europe. A cage containing a rat would be strapped against a prisoner's bare stomach or chest. Then the other end of the cage was heated, forcing the rat to burrow in the only direction it could escape, through the victim's body. The scratching, gnawing, and sheer terror made this one of the most psychologically devastating tortures ever devised. Death wasn't always the goal. Sometimes the mere threat of a rat cage was enough to break even the strongest will. Of course, the era also loved beheading, simple in concept, but far from merciful in practice. An executioner's skill determined whether it was quick or agonizing. A clean cut with a sharp axe or sword might end things instantly, but if the blade was dull, or the executioner nervous, it could take multiple swings. In 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, was famously botched. It reportedly took 3 blows before her head was fully severed, and even then, the executioner lifted her head only for her wig to slip off, revealing her hair still attached to her scalp. The crowd was horrified, but this was reality. In the 16th century, even a merciful execution could become a nightmare. One punishment that blended pain with artistry was the Spanish garrote. At first glance, it looked almost mundane, a wooden chair with a metal collar around the neck, but once tightened, the iron ring crushed the throat or snapped the spine. Sometimes a sharp spike was positioned at the back, driven into the skull as the screw turned. Death could be swift if the executioner was merciful, or drawn out if he wanted to savor it. Unlike burning or breaking, the garrote was relatively quiet, a silent, suffocating death in front of a hushed audience. Spain used it for centuries, perfecting it as both execution and performance. For religious dissenters, punishments took on an especially grotesque